Words matter. Words change the tone, the frame, and behavior, and words can change practice. The old saying of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me isn't really true, because words can hurt, but words can also heal. I want to welcome everyone to the final episode of the Words Matter series. Since January of 2022, we have provided space and time to engage in open and authentic discussions about the impact of common terminology used in child-serving systems with those that are directly affected. Our goal has been to illuminate how the terms we use can influence perception, approach, and practice, as well as explore alternative language and approaches as a means of intentionally shifting how we view and interact with youth, with families, and with each other. So today we're going to be doing something a little different. It is our last episode. We will look back on the series and invite you, our participants, to share how hearing directly from young adults and caregivers how terminology impacts them has impacted you. I'm also excited that we have Brittany Zeller-Holland with us. She's a graphic facilitator, and she is going to be illustrating the discussion and sharing the resulting graphics for the end of the episode as part of this series culmination. So there is something we're going to do that we normally do. Before we begin, let's take a minute and let's think about this series. What you've heard, what you've learned, how it's affected your perspective. Think for a minute, what are you doing differently as a result of participating in Words Matter? And we're going to do a Menti poll, because that's what we do here. So using the link that's in the chat box, just respond in just a few words to the poll with how this series has impacted you. You can see in the chat, there's a link. You can also go to menti.com and use the code here that's at the top, 8422-3927, to enter a response. I think we've got some people who are annotating on the screen. No more preferred pronouns. That's actually the thing that has stuck with me since that episode, that it's not preferred. It is someone's pronoun. Get a few more responses in there. Document differently. Yep. This only lets you put in just a couple of words, so try to put just a few things. Maybe it's your approach. Maybe it's words you use. Mindful, intentional, yes. Think before. Well, those are really good. Listening. Speaking up. I love that intentional is showing up in here. Pronoun showed up again, so people were really impacted by that one. I know it has stuck with me. I am the parent of a transgender youth, and pronouns is something that I've struggled with initially, but that helped me to think it's not a preferred thing. It's really someone's pronouns are valid. I think I've already said that. Stigma, stereotype. This is great. Just another minute for people to respond before we move on. The empathy, different interpretations. So the biggest ones showing up are intentional and mindful. That makes me feel wonderful because that's sort of the purpose of the series, is to be more intentional. Thank you. Thank you for participating in that. Thanks, Joanne. If you want to close out the Menti.
Not letting me close. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Technical difficulties, it happens. Okay. So, we've done word clouds all along, and that's something that we have been keeping up with. I'm going to talk about what we're going to do with all of the information before we close out today. But I want to cover what we've done since January of 2022. We have had 18 episodes with 44 different discussants over the past year and a half. So I'm going to show you a little bit of information. These are all the topics that we've covered during that time. We kicked it off with talking about the term system of care and what does that mean. And if anybody was there at that very first kickoff episode, we talked about, it's really about systems that care, communities of care, and what that really meant. And we have been through talking about serious emotional disturbance, about mental illness, pronouns that came up a lot in the word cloud. Using the term client or consumer or addiction. What does resilience mean? Involvement versus engagement. Terminology that's used in documentation and how that can impact youth and families years down the road with how they're treated, what they can access. That was a very impactful episode. We talked about minority. We talked about what does partnership mean? And had some really good discussion about it's not a one-time thing. You show me that you can partner with me, but you have to do it ongoing, something you learn and you continue to use. Tolerance versus acceptance, and how we really want to focus on moving toward acceptance and even beyond that. And then in July, we closed out our last episode with discussions with family and what does family mean? Chosen family, how everyone defines their family different, and how we have a narrow view a lot of times within our systems of what family means. I want to give a quick shout out to all of our discussants. You can see their names on here. I think I got everybody on here. Sometimes we had people pop in at the last minute to be able to join us, and I may have missed somebody, but thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing your experiences, your expertise. Sometimes hard things that have happened, things that still can anger you or make you sad. It just, you have such an impact in sharing your story with everyone nationally. So I want to say right now, thank you for being part of this series. After each episode, we've also asked participants to complete a survey so that we have an idea of where everyone's from, what they liked about the series, how can we make it better, what are some other things that Intact can bring to you. And you may not know this, but at Intact, we actually use the data that we get to inform our work so that we are meeting your needs. And so I wanted to get some of that data back to you today. We compiled all of the surveys from January of 2022 to July of 2023, and have wanted to give back some information to you about that and some of the things that people have said. So this is not going to be representative of everybody who's attended, but those who completed the survey. And you will be able to have a copy of this because Joanne's going to drop it into the chat for you. So let me bring that up. Bigger. Okay, so this is in the chat for you to have. But just to let you know, we have had people joining us and responding to the survey from almost every state. I think it's 45 states. And you can see the breakdown here. When I look at this, this makes me think, we didn't target the right people. We didn't have the right people on every single time. This gives us information about we need to have representation in our discussants. We need to have representation in our participants. We want to make sure that we are meeting people where they are and in the way that works best for them and being culturally responsive. You can see the colors here. We had a lot of people from Texas and California. It may have something to do with the fact that the CARS Intact home office is in California. Okay, go down. We asked several questions, and the questions changed slightly from one fiscal year to the next. So some of this is we weren't able to put because they weren't the same year to year. But you can see that we got pretty good ratings about being on target with what we were trying to do with a 4.4 average rating. And the mean satisfaction rate was 4.51. So, you know, we have less than 10% weren't happy with us. So 90% experience the quality as very good or excellent. And we also asked, what was most valuable about this? I just want to touch on a couple of these. You can read these, and you may have actually responded to this, and this may be your response. But the most valuable thing is hearing the stories of those with lived experiences. We need to listen to them. They are the ones we're supposed to be serving, and they have a wealth of information about what works and what doesn't work. Listening with an open mind. I love someone said that they learned more about the meaning behind words. So did I. There were some that were brought up that we weren't talking about that I was like, wow, I didn't know that. We've had some really intelligent discussants who have researched stuff. Wonderful opportunity to hear thoughts about the use of the word, and this one was about trauma, and to have discussion in the chat. Terminology impact, implication of words, varies per context. Reminded me to be careful when using descriptive documentation in child file. That was a big one that impacted me, that episode. The discussant, honest and thought-provoking. Down, because we have a lot of exposure to diverse opinions, beliefs, and perspectives, because we need more of that. The wisdom from the peer support individual. You know, peer support, that whole workforce is undervalued, in my opinion. They can really help things go better and really support families in some of their most difficult times. And here is a list of knowledge or skills that you apply to your work as a result of attending. You know, being more attentive, more inclusive, being more intentional, and really taking the time to put effort forth into changing the way that you use terms. Some understanding seems to have come forth, particularly around trauma, and how you may never see how it totally impacts somebody. Being able to share this information with other people so that they too can change the way they use terms and, like here, how they approach documentation. Person first language. People like to use shortcuts, which can negatively impact youth and families and be hurtful. And I love this. These terms do not define who that person really is. That's so important. Yeah, there's a lot in here to look at. And even some suggestions that we've had about how to continue to offer things that are helpful to you. And that's what this next list is. I think we could do this monthly for the indefinite future on this topic alone. I want to know what that topic was. That's very interesting to me. So wanted to share that data with you. Bring that back down. Okay, so I know that everyone who has been attending this, even for a couple of episodes, you are used to hearing from a panel of discussants. But today, we really want to hear from you. Please tell us how this series has impacted the way in which you work with youth or families, or how you interact with colleagues, or how you support and mentor others. You can use the chat to share. I encourage you to use the raise hand feature and share out loud. We have a number of our previous discussants who are on here, and so I encourage them to chime in as well. So starting now, if anyone would like to share, please put that in the chat or use the raise your hand feature. Hopefully everybody knows how to do that. It's under the reactions. There's one that says raise hand, and you can raise your hand. So think about, is there an episode that impacted you the most that you were part of? Or were any of the terms that we discussed, did they resonate with you? Did you have some similar experiences? Was there a particular person on one of the discussant panels that made a significant impact on your perspective or your approach, or who said something that stuck with you? Like I said, I think it was Chia that said, it's not a preferred pronoun for me. It is my pronoun. And that has just lived with me in my head, and I've tried to change the way I refer to that, use that, made a big impact. Oh, I knew Adamina had something to say. Adamina, you can unmute.
Hello, how is everyone today? Hope you're all doing well. Again, my name is Adamina Tankersley. I'm a team member here at Intech as well. For me, the panel that I was on was serious emotional disturbance. What was very impactful for me is how so many in the field disagree with that term. But that's the legal term to get you to access for certain services. And then the research behind how you can put efforts towards changing that on a state level, because that's something that you have to change, on your state level, because that gives government funding towards a certain group of people. Because I was just like, I can't stand this term. Why are you labeling my son seriously emotionally disturbed? Like, I don't like it. It's not considered a diagnosis, but that's the terminology used when you're stamping it on all his information. And for me, I really think it oftentimes put him at a disadvantage, because when people would see that on a packet, when a school he was going to go to, he was automatically judged off of that labeling. Like, oh, I don't know if we can handle this. This might be too much for us, as opposed to like meeting my son, talking to my son and getting to know him, and then making determinations from there. So I was really kind of blown away that this is like a state level term that's used across states to put you in a category. Like, can't we find a better word for that category? So that's the one that really, really resonated with me, being a part of that discussion and learning like the backstory of that term, and just putting a fire under me of wanting to change it even more.
Yeah, it's actually a federal term, and that's why it's
Federal.
so difficult to change. But there's still, that's something that is really a lot of people, and definitely some folks within FredLove would like to push for that to change. But it can be in your approach, and that's what we talked about in that episode: ways you cannot use that term with youth and families. I see Valencia has her hand up.
Hey, I was thinking the same thing, because that was actually my first Words Matter session that I attended. And sorry, I can't use my camera today. But I remember that whenever my daughter was first diagnosed with that term, I remember sitting in the park crying and thinking, like, just being so brokenhearted reading through everything. And I wished that I had known that it was just a diagnostic criteria word and not like a medical like to get her services. I don't know how, I don't remember how they termed it, but it's not like,
Eligibility.
right, an eligibility criteria instead of a diagnosis. And I have just been telling every family that I work with now that, and just I've seen like the stress just melt off people's face when you explain that this isn't a diagnosis your child is going to carry around and everyone's going to know for the rest of their life. This is just you know, terms that are used to help your child access the services they need. And that was so impactful to me personally and with working with other families. And the other one was just seeing um, the diversity of people that were allowed, you know, invited to be a part of this. I remember a specific episode that impacted me. It was like a preacher and a youth, and just or like a pastor and a youth, and just that episode. I was like, this is amazing. Let's get together and talk and have discussions. And so it's really impacted me personally. So I wanted to share that.
And you were also a discussant on an episode at one point.
Yes, I think that I was it family driven?
Could have been. I think so.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So I appreciate being a part of this series.
Mhm. Thank you. How about somebody else? How has this impacted you? How is there something you've changed? Was there a particular person that said something that you're like, wow, that makes sense, or I didn't know that? Essence, yes, please. Good to see you.
Beautiful people. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
I hope you're well. Thank you for the opportunity. One thing I will say is I was a part of the youth driven Words Matter conversation. And I would say that because I talked about it, like I worked at Sankofa Freedom School, and it's a Afrocentric school, and they teach reading to kids and stuff like that. And oh wow. And when I thought about youth driven, I thought about youth, thought about like folks that are like, yes, a part of the youth actually being in positions where they could control the environment and create the environment, much like Meet Me in the Middle. Shout out to Tracy. Oh, where's this other person? Oh, and Michelle and David. Yeah. Shout out to Miss Tankersley. Sorry, that's cool. That's okay. And I just really thought about it, and that like that interaction with the opportunity with Sankofa as well as with you all, thank you, made me even more comfortable, like getting a therapist who was a grad student. So yeah, that was really nice. That's just something I connected because like she was useful, and it's like she didn't have like the degrees and everything, but it still was an amazing experience. So that's what I want to say. But thank you all.
Thank you for chiming in. Good to see you. See some familiar names on here who've been here for a number of episodes. We also have some folks who are here for the very first time. And you can access all of the recordings on the InTech website, and a lot of them are on our Facebook page as well, so that you can see the ones that you missed. Who's next? This is your chance to share. Are there any terms that really stood out to you that you're like, yes, that's misused all the time?
Hi, this is Nicole Morin. I work for the Department of Children and Families and the Substance Use and Mental Health Office. And this is my first time here, but I did, I forget the lady who shared about about her son and the label that, that was put on him. But I do a lot of recovery oriented system of care trainings and trainings around language. And one of the words, and her story just reminded me of, because I worked with youth for 5 years, what they would label people as non-compliant. Um, and that word seems like it wouldn't be such a big deal, but it would follow these youth around with them in their charts over and over and over again. So the second, even if I would get a chart and I would read it, I'd be like, oh man, they're non-compliant, they're this, they're that, or whatever. And I stopped looking at charts after a while. I was like, I don't even need to see this, because what I'm gonna get when I look at this youth is going to be completely different than what this chart says and these labels. But one word with the non-compliance, I always kind of talk about, because it shuts the door on people, right? It really does. Like, non-compliant is kind of, to me, another word of like, I'm done with you, this is it. Like, you're non-compliant, doors shut, there's no more room for engagement. But I always tell people to use the word not engaged, because I'm a person in recovery and long-term recovery, and I had to go through drug court, and I had to go through all these things, and I was one of those people who wasn't engaged for a while. And when the court system looked at I had a judge, a really great judge, thank God. But he is now the mental health judge in my area. But he said, okay, well, what do you think to the state? And they're like, oh no, she's non-compliant. She's, left this place and that place and this place. And he just decided to override it. And I was ready at that point to get treatment, right? So if I see the word not engaged, in my mind, as someone who works in the community, I can engage that person, you know? It leaves the door open for engagement, because maybe it didn't work with this one or that school or whatever, but that doesn't mean that the kid or adult should just be labeled like non-compliant. And I think that word just gets thrown down a lot. And it really shuts the door on a lot of people, a lot of things, because we also never know where our files or documents or things like are going to wind up either. Like in my case, like in the courts. And if I didn't have a good judge, I would never have the job that I have today, because they would have kicked me out of drug court. Right. Because if he would have just listened to the state and be like, oh, nope, and seen all the negative things there, he would have read that and said no and shut the door. And I might not be able to help all the people that I've helped on my journey in those last 10 years, so, that's it. I don't want to take up too much time, but, and I know I'm new, so I could be way off here, but that just came to
no,
my
you
mind.
are right on track. And actually, as soon as you said that, I thought, oh, we missed the chance to include that as one of the terms, because that's one that drives me up the wall as well. If someone says non-compliant, or you have a family not coming in to appointment, you have to examine how have we engaged or not engaged them. And you also have to take a look at, is it because it's my plan and not theirs? Is it on my schedule and not theirs? I mean, there are so many things behind that. That word just crawls all over me. And I feel like we did miss a chance to talk about that one. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share.
Wonderful. Debbie, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, ma'am. This is my first time here also. I work with Children's Medical Services in the state of Florida in the Title V program as a family leader. And what you guys were just talking about really resonates with me, because I am sort of a bridge between families and providers in the community. And that word non-compliant really aggravates me also, because a lot of times providers are not putting themselves in these families' places, because I have children with disabilities and I deal with children with disabilities, and it may not be non-compliance at all. The family may not have transportation. They may not have a babysitter. They may can't get the child with autism out the door and dressed because it's flooding and the kid's scared to go outside. So there are a lot of things that can cause a person not to attend to a provider's recommended care plan. Okay. And it is so disgusting to see things charted as non-compliance when they don't know what the family is going through. They don't take the time to talk to the people. They don't take the time to put themselves in those people's places. It's not that the family doesn't want to do it or doesn't care about their child. It's they're having definite difficulties that need to be addressed. And so instead of people just saying, oh, they're non-compliant, they need to look into it more as to what do we do to help them get the services they need.
Absolutely. You're so right. I always say truancy isn't always just skipping school, for example. There's always something behind that reason. We can't make assumptions. So I hate that we miss doing non-compliant because I think that's a perfect one for this series. I really appreciate that that's brought up. Sarita, I see your hand up.
Hello, everyone. I am a family partner in North Carolina, and I work directly with families. So I am that link between systems and families and trying to understand what's going on with the family. So that really resonated with me with the speaker or the last person that shared that the systems don't understand what families are going through. They're trying to, a lot of times they're in survival mode, and when they hear struggling, lots of negative words that, you know, they talk about their families and things like that. So we try to change it to affirming language, like challenges and barriers, because challenges, we can overcome those barriers, we can work around them to get the family where they need to be. So I support and advocate for the families and making sure that the systems are aware of what's going on with the family as to why the family didn't show up in court. Because a lot of times I'm working with families that have DSS and DJJ involvement. And the families don't, you know, they don't trust those systems. They've had family members that have had, you know, involvement, or friends, or, you know, they just have a negative connotation or label with the systems, and they don't feel that they're supported. They don't feel that they're heard. So I'm that person that's basically the systems don't like because I'm there to speak on behalf of the families and make sure that the families are a part of the table, as you said, making sure that they're a part of the process and not just, you know, they're being told what to do. They're actually there to help put. So we talked about, you know, CFT meetings. They have a team. Yes, they have a team, but is the team really there to provide that support? So having my, I guess my words would be team versus support. Like, is it really a team that is supportive, or is it just a team that has their own agendas and need their things done for the family?
Yeah. So encouraging the use of those terms that are more about partnering with families, that are more respectful of the experiences that families have. And so that's one of the things that we all can do intentionally, is not use non-compliant. Encourage people to use other words, to use challenges, because like you said, we can overcome those. We can overcome barriers. Using terminology that is something we can do something about and provides and empowers support for the family and for our young people, you know, really listening to them as well. Are there any other terms that have been focused on this year that really resonated with you, or a discussant who said something? I often I use some of the clips from one of the Words Matter episodes, the one on partnership, in some training because the discussant that day just said something. I'm like, we got to capture that. It was just perfect. Thought I saw somebody unmute there for a second. I'm looking through the chat, and there are just a number of nuggets of wisdom in here. I encourage everybody to interact that way. in the chat, just words do matter, continue to impact our lives. Some people find it helpful to talk with the family about what certain words mean to them, so that you can use the right things. You may not be aware that you're using a term or a label that can be hurtful. And Jen Novo, who also was a discussant on one of our, I think, equity maybe, in December. The series really emphasized to me power dynamics and how terms can influence each other. Yeah. Oh, you want me to post the words again? That's not a bad idea. Let me share my screen and I can bring that back up. Here we go. These are all the terms that we've looked at. Talked about SED. We've definitely talked about pronouns. How resilience can be a positive term or a negative term, depending on the context and who it's used with and what their experience is. Are there any of these that really resonated with you? Has anybody in their daily work now changed something? Have you changed wording on a document? Have you changed the way you refer to youth and families?
Millie, this is Tracy.
Yeah.
One of the things that I continue to go back to is listen to Oscar talk about the impact of documentation, and that when he requested his information and then he saw what people had written about him, how it affected him even though it was years later, and how he was telling us just to pay such close attention to how we're documenting things and making sure that it's one thing if our language with the folks that we're working with or with our coworkers is strengths-based, but make sure that that goes all the way into every bit of the documentation as well, because that, I don't know that we always keep that in mind as much. I think sometimes our documentation might be a little bit more deficit-based than strengths-based. And so that really stood out to me.
That's so true. Our systems are more deficit-based than strengths-based, and we have to change that with every family that we work with and every provider that we work with our colleagues. Try to encourage them to look at what's there, not always what's not there. And our documentation does show that. In the chat, Chelsea, we changed from runaway to missing. Catherine, no cases or caseloads. Same thing with client and consumer. Their families, their young people, their youth, their children. Susan says, I don't see help. How can I help you? I'm here to help you. How can I support you getting help? Why do you think I need help? Thank you, Bridget, for putting the screenshot of the topic slide. So what else? What's something else that you have changed that you once used to say, or a term you use that you don't do anymore? Gloria, thank you. Been actively trying to change the idea that one has to put on or take off a hat. People should be able to be their whole selves at all times. Moved away from using justice system to legal system. Oh, Tay, yes, I no longer use brainstorm. I actually went through 2 curricula that we have and took that out and changed it to idea generation, because of what I learned about that. The same thing with stakeholders. It was one of our discussants who brought that up, and I think it was actually at the Parent Peer Support Institute. We did a Words Matter there, and brought up where stakeholder comes from. And rule of thumb is another one that I've just taken out of my vocabulary. I think that's LaMonica's hand, but it says me on there. It says Millie Sweeney. Is it LaMonica? No, it's not you. Who else is, you're not on camera, but it says Millie Sweeney. You can unmute.
It might be me. This is Lynn Urbina. I don't know why my
Hi, Lynn.
name's not showing, but
You
so
use the link to get on, so that's okay. Not a problem.
so I don't know how many of the people that have participated in this work with families that are in need of help, but maybe not part of the formal child welfare system. And I did that for many years, and I was one of those people for many years as a kinship caregiver. And one of the terms that is used so often by government employees, at least in the state of Washington, is formal families and informal families. And they were calling my family an informal family. I spent thousands of dollars and many years going to court to get a court order. I had legal custody and later adopted, and yet according to the state, I was informal. I didn't consider that very informal. It was way more formal, and I had gone through a lot more than some of the people who had all of this assistance from the state. And so I've been on a one-man crusade, one-woman crusade. There again, there's titles. But to try to get, if they feel like they need to determine that, there is a difference in the legal aspect of some of these families, for ones like mine to be called independent families. Because every time I said, why can't we use this term? Oh, well, the whole system is used to using this word. And it was like I was I continued to just hit this brick wall that they can't see that they're disrespecting people who went to a lot of time and effort to create a safe family for children by just saying we're informal. So I don't know if that applies to anyone here. But if you're doing that, you might check and see if your families would appreciate a different term being used to apply to them.
Absolutely. And you talked about family in the last episode in July, and how it's defined. We all define our families differently, and that should be respected. It's not just biological. It's not formal or informal. Family's family. And we define that for ourselves. So thank you for sharing that. Chelsea also says they moved from using foster parents to resource parents. Marciela, talking about trauma. Trauma is handled and taken differently by family members. Their healing is going to be different for all of them. So meeting people and supporting them where they are on their own journey without labeling. Yeah. So Takori is asking about brainstorming and why that's not a good word. It goes back to the days of asylums and refers to those who were having brainstorms, those who were maybe experiencing psychosis, that sort of thing.
Hey, Millie.
Yeah.
I've also heard that it's tied back to the epilepsy community. So like a very real thing that's happening within brains that's overloading, which causes their physical bodies to shut down. So in general, and absolutely to what you said as well, to the old school days of institutions and mental asylums. So largely, I think that the term is just viewed as sort of like ableism and ableist at this point because of those two regions, and got me actually thinking about all the different words and phrases that we use that include specific body parts. And so I'm always trying to like get rid of that language, and it comes up all the time for me, you know? And so I just like love this series because words do matter. And I love that we can come together and be really reflective and really implement ourselves, right? Like I have a lot of work to do on myself. And so I just appreciate being in a community where we can have these conversations and really try to have more affirming language. It's just really awesome. So just want to say I appreciate everything.
Thank you, Tank. And thank you for also sharing that, because I can definitely see exactly why that would come from the those who have epilepsy and how that could be very negative to them. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to say before we close out for the day? A couple more. Definitely want to share Brittany's illustration here in just a minute. So want to make sure that everyone has a chance to say something if they'd like to.
Hi, Millie. This is Tiffany Williams.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hi. I just wanted to share and kind of add to, I see a lot of the comments about around foster parents and so forth, and serving as a family engagement coordinator and a foster parent myself, I found that for some families, it is intimidating to call a foster parent, or even to a child. And then in the families that I connect with, I found and have changed pretty much all the terminology just to say caregiver, because that caregiver can apply to parents, to a relative, to a friend. And so the caregiver kind of resonates better for me when it comes to talking about the parents or families.
Point. I think one of the things that's come up throughout this series is that we have been provided with other terms and approaches to use from the youth and families who have spoken. And so like Kay said, each one of us can do something different. As a result, regardless of what our role is, regardless of where we work, just in the terms that we choose to use, and be intentional about that. And then to learn more, if we use something and someone says, oh, that's offensive, tell me more. What can I do? What's more respectful with what you've been through for me to use? So this is something that everyone can do when you take the time to do it. Oh, Jen, that's a great idea. Love to see this expanded into the Latin Hispanic community. There was actually in the feedback, someone said they would like to explore more about pronouns in the Hispanic community. That was one of the requests or things they'd like to learn more about. There's probably a lot also within the African American community.
Miss Millie.
Yes.
You know what? I wish that there was a way that we would not lose the meaning of, or the intention of, the words people of color. But we're all people of color. Every color is a color. You know, I just, and I understand the need or the want or the reasoning behind that terminology, but I wish there was some other way we could say that.
Yeah, that's.
In following up with that, I guess I have been struck by the new terminology that everyone is using for Latinx. I mean, I don't understand it. Like, why would anyone, like, you know, I'm from Latin America, and Latinx is almost making me, and I know a lot of people that like myself feel the same way, almost like let's forget that you exist. Let's X you out. Like Latinx is the whole terminology around it, is horrifying for us. Because it goes back to not just our culture as a whole, like I guess people are saying because we use a lot of feminine, masculine words, but that's our culture, that's our language, that's, that's how, like you can call something that is not, so it's a huge conversation, I guess, but I would encourage everyone to look into that.
Joanna, I agree with you on that. I mean, I'm Hispanic and I know a lot of folks that are, and I don't know where that term came from. I don't know if a Hispanic person came up with that term or not, but I don't agree with it myself either.
Yeah, I mean, I have the history around it, but like I said, it's a long conversation, but it's our culture, and I don't want to be called Latinx. And I know a lot of folks that do not want to be called Latinx. The other thing that I heard even like a couple of weeks ago that I feel like I'm struck by this conversation, it was a public conversation at a special needs, a CPAC meeting, where someone said, well, where I live, I don't have the problem of like broken families. Because there was a lot of divorced individuals, like, several families that were divorced. And I felt like, like we can move away from that as well. And then someone said the Latinx community, it seems like there's a lot of broken families in that community. So it was difficult to hear.
Yes. And I think someone said in the chat that it had to do with it being more of a non-gendered,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, gender non-conforming. I think that there are, as you guys have been mentioning different things, I'm like, I know we talked about minority at one time, but we didn't go into any specific, I guess, culture or race or anything like that. So there's always the need for more conversation about it. I know Adamina had her hand up and so did Kay, but you both put them down. So I don't know if that's something that you want to, I'll give you a chance to be able to say something.
I did. I'm kind of on the fence, but I'm like, you know what? You need to say something if it's, something that landed wrong. To the question of people of color. So for me, when you say we're all people of color, for me, that kind of lands where you're saying, when someone says Black Lives Matter and you're like, all lives matter. So for me, being a person of color, multiracial, I think more understanding needs to be made or behind understanding why people of color land well for some of us, instead of trying to say, can we remove it? Because I'm just struggling to see the negative part in what you're seeing about people of color, because we all are not in that category of people of color.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to add that.
I would like to address that. I meant in no way anything bad or no way anything condescending. I apologize if you took my comment wrong. It was in no way intended to be that way. I apologize. I did not mean for that to land on you that way. Like I said, I don't know how to do this, but I understand the content and the reasoning behind the term. I do. It's just that I also have the opinion of, I just would like for everybody to be looked at as a human being, and we all have different needs and we all have different problems. We all have different ways that we are approached for whatever reason. And again, I apologize. I meant no disrespect in any way. And I hope that you take that as it is intended as a sincere apology and forgive me because I had no bad intentions.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Adamina. I think one of the things that you guys just both showed is that this is a space for conversation, and it has been, and to address misunderstanding and different perspectives, the way someone chooses to use something or doesn't understand the use of it, or it's all about using our experiences because our perspectives come from that. We see it through the lens of our experiences, and being able to have these type of conversations to understand each other, because we all are human, but we all are humans without the same backgrounds, experiences, I'm gonna say privileges. Everyone is different and from a different perspective, and what hits right for some people is not going to hit right with another, because of what we've been through and where we've come from. So I think
that I'm sorry. What I loved about what just happened really is that this helps you like wonder and be more like careful, as to, because like when I said Latinx, maybe other people will wonder, why, and maybe I won't say that, but then like I'm a person of color, let's say, but I never knew that terminology until I came to this country, because back home, we don't call each other people of color. We just call each other Hispanics, right? We're all in the same boat and just different color. But I learned that here, I still don't use it, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't. You know what I mean? It's just not in my vocabulary, but it's cultural too, but it makes you wonder the two different, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And that's, I love the fact that we have so many different experiences that are here within this group, both the participants and the discussants, who are willing to have those type of conversations and are willing to say, what should I be doing? What should I be saying? What should I avoid? Because we all have the same goal, which is to support the youth and the families that we serve and to work collaboratively with each other. So I want to thank everyone. We're getting close to our time. These are all conversations that, you could just take one day and focus on one thing and go into deep conversation. And I hope that with your colleagues and with the families and the youth you work with and with each other, that you continue to have conversations beyond these series, and hear when someone says, that hit me wrong, or I prefer to use a different term, or it's not my preferred pronoun, it's my pronoun, and that's respected. It's all about being intentional. So I very much appreciate hearing from everybody today. Thank you for those who joined us for the first time, and for those who've been here since the beginning, and all in between. As we've been talking, Brittany has been illustrating, and so she is going to share with us the illustration. And it's a short time-lapse video, so that it's I think she said it's going to be like 3 to 4 minutes. So let's take a minute and look at this.
right, that's it.
That's fantastic. Wow. Thank you, Brittany. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. It was a
Um,
pleasure to graphic record this conversation.
Fantastic. We definitely will be sharing this. It's so cool. I want to let everybody know in the coming year, what we hope to do is to package the videos and the word clouds and all the feedback and this wonderful graphic illustration here into a resource or resources that are available through Intact that you can use in your work with young adults, with families, and with colleagues. Again, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for sharing your experiences and your expertise with us, not just today, but throughout the entire series. If you've intentionally changed your use of terminology or your approach due to hearing from young people and from families through the Words Matter series, keep it up. And just always remember that words matter. Thank you.